I can shout in the meantime. We're going to take 2020 Worthington Avenue first, and then we're going to move on to 251 Cherokee Street, if anyone is waiting. And let's see, 823 North New Street will be continued until August, if anyone is waiting for those. Absolutely. Worthington Avenue first. Okay. And you can pull those mics toward yourself then when you sit down. That's okay. Me too.
I think Darlene's gonna read this just to call the case once she's back here.
Yeah, I'll have her read it.
Do you want me to do that now?
No. I'll do the intros and then.
Okay.
Okay, welcome to the regular meeting of the City of Bethlehem Zoning Board. My name is Jessica Lee, and I'm serving as your chairman for this evening. And serving tonight are Peter Schneck and Carol Ritter, who is an alternate member, but she will be a voting member tonight. Our zoning officer tonight is Darlene Heller, and she'll also serve as our secretary. Our solicitor tonight for the first two appeals is Attorney Richard Campbell. And our stenographer is Moira Evans. And if anyone has any questions or comments for the appellants, please stand so you could be sworn in by Moira. If you have questions or comments, anything to ask the appellant. Nobody's going to ask questions or anything?
You want to swear the witnesses in too?
Yes, everyone.
Am I ready?
Everyone.
Yes, then you, yep, and John? For all of them, all the applications
For
tonight, or just
anyone
the
that's
first
going to
one?
offer testimony.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
what-
and
that's
anyone
what-
that's going to offer
Everybody,
testimony.
yep, that's what she wants, everybody. Everybody.
That is questions and comments.
I got
And raise your right hand.
Oh, look.
You
There
do-
we go.
You do swear or affirm that the testimony which you shall give in the matter now before this board shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You do so swear or affirm?
Okay. Okay, for the first case, I guess I'll have Darlene read the appeal first.
For 2020 Worthington Avenue, this is the appeal of Valerie Reinhardt on behalf of Pennsylvania Youth Theater for a special exception to waive the minimum required off-street parking, 0 spaces existing. 196 spaces were previously required for a place of worship, and 42 spaces are now required for a school/theater. This lot is located in the RT High Density Residential Zoning District.
Okay, can you tell us when the property was posted with the yellow card?
Yes, it was posted on July 15th. I have a copy of a photograph of the posting in our packet.
Okay,
Okay?
And I would just note for the record that the application and board materials will be marked as zoning hearing board exhibit 1.
We might be repeating.
That's fine.
Okay.
okay, you can proceed then.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Kate Durso from Fitzpatrick, Lenz and Buba, here on behalf of the applicant. Exhibit 1 in the packet is a copy of the proof of posting of the property that was done on July 15th.
Okay.
And with that, we'll start with our witness, Valerie. Can you state your name for the record?
Valerie Reinhardt,
And can you spell your last name?
Reinhardt.
And Valerie, where do you work?
Pennsylvania Youth Theater,
And what is your job title at Pennsylvania Youth Theater?
Managing Director.
And has the PYT entered into an agreement of sale to purchase property located at 2020 Worthington Avenue?
Yes,
I'm going to show you what's marked in the exhibit package as Exhibit A2. Is Exhibit A2 a redacted copy of the agreement of sale?
yes, it is.
And the current owner of the property is Lehigh University, is that correct?
Yes,
And is proceeding with the acquisition of the property conditioned on getting the necessary zoning and other related approvals?
yes,
Is it your understanding that prior to Lehigh University's acquisition of the property, that it was owned by Light of Christ Lutheran Church?
That is correct. Yes.
And is it your understanding that the church used the property for a place of worship with daycare offices, religious education as accessory uses?
Yes.
Let's go to the PYT. When did the PYT begin?
1985.
And what type of organization is the PYT?
Pennsylvania Youth Theater is a nonprofit performing arts organization. Our mission is to educate and entertain and enrich the lives of young people and their families through the art of theater. We use a comprehensive performing arts curriculum, literature-based performances, and vigorous outreach programs to challenge children to develop their talents, to think creatively, and to acquire an appreciation and understanding of the arts. So we offer classes in dance, drama, and voice.
And has the city of Bethlehem been the PYT's home since it started?
Yes, it has.
And is the PYT currently a tenant at the Banana Factory?
Yes, we are.
And has it been a tenant there for approximately 25 years?
Yes.
And is it necessary for the PYT to relocate since there's a scheduled tear down of the Banana Factory buildings?
Yes, it is.
Is it important for the PYT to try to find a suitable space within the city of Bethlehem?
Yes. We were founded by long-term Bethlehem resident Madeline Ramsey back in 1985. We have a strong relationship with the city of Bethlehem. We have a strong relationship with the Bethlehem Area School District and several other school districts within the Lehigh Valley and beyond. We have our partners here in the city. We do residency programs here in the city and also outside of the city of Bethlehem for local school districts. So we do have a long-standing relationship with folks within the city and as well as, beyond Lehigh Valley.
And will the use of the 2020 Worthington Avenue property enable a reuse of a non-residential structure within a residential district?
Yes.
And you mentioned about having classes in drama, voice, and dance. Do the students range in age from 3 to 18?
Yes, they do.
And when do the school educational programs run?
We operate from September to April and June. Our drama and voice division runs from September to April. Our dance division runs from September to June. In addition to that, we do run summer camp programs, 10 weeks, sometimes 11 weeks, depending on how the calendar falls. Those programs run from June to August. Our classes during the school year operate Monday through Thursday from 4:30 to 9:30, depending on the class. Fridays, we have our little guys that come to class, and they are there from 4:30 to 5:15. And Saturdays, we run a class from 11 to 1.
And on average, how many students attend the classes each day?
Each day, about 40 to 50 students come to classes each day.
And currently, are the students primarily dropped off at the start of class and picked up at the end?
Yes, they are.
And about approximately how many students would be able to drive themselves?
Based on our analysis of our 24-25 season, we will have 17 12th graders that will register for classes.
And they're the ones obviously of age to be able to potentially drive.
Correct.
And when you have the classes, do you have any faculty members?
We do.
And
yes.
approximately how many faculty members for the classes?
We have about 8 faculty members that will teach, but part of those faculty members are staff members as well. So we have 2 to 3 staff members that also teach classes in the evening.
And then when you talked about the summer camp program, what's the average number of students that attend the camp each week?
About 65 students each week.
And are there employees that assist with the camp program?
Yes, typically there's about 8 counselors per week that teach the classes during the week.
And does the camp work similar to the classes where there is a drop-off and a pickup scheduled?
Yes, except the scheduling is reversed in the summertime. Instead of operating in the evenings, we operate during the day for the summer camps.
So typically, when would be the drop-off?
Our summer camp begins at 9 a.m. and it ends at 4. However, we do offer a before care and an aftercare program, so parents can drop off as early as 8 a.m. and pick up as late as 6 p.m.
And when would be the typical drop-off time? About a half hour before class starts?
We only allow them about 10 to 15 minutes before class starts. So most drop-offs will begin at 8:45.
And do you maintain administrative office hours?
We do, yes.
And what are the administrative office hours?
That too is kind of dependent on our scheduling. However, we are technically open at 9 a.m. and we close at 9:30 p.m. So based on what is happening, some of the staff is there at 9, some arrive at 11, some don't arrive until 1. And then their departure times are varied as well.
And do you have any requirements as it relates to parents having to drop off and pick up?
The only ones that we do allow to stay are the ones for the little guys on Fridays. We also have a younger dance class that operates on Mondays at a similar time. So the folks that have the 3-year-olds, we do allow them to wait on property for their child to finish class.
So the majority, though, of people who would need parking are the staff members and then some of the 12th graders and then the parents of the younger guys.
Correct.
In addition to the class and camp offerings, in the future, would the PYT be interested in potentially using the sanctuary space as an auditorium for performances?
Yes, we would.
Let's go to what's existing on the property. Is it your understanding that the original chapel was constructed in 1952?
Yes,
And there was a school addition done in 1960?
correct.
And then a sanctuary added in 1974?
Yes,
Is your understanding that since those 1950s, the property has continuously been used for religious and associated purposes?
yes,
And they've occupied that building and used that property without any off-street parking, is that correct?
yes,
And to your knowledge, it's never had any, what I'll say, on-site parking?
correct.
Is the PYT requesting to similarly not have off-street parking?
Correct, yes.
Based on the parking requirements for a school use, is it your understanding that's one space for every 1.5 employees plus off-street spaces for the safe and convenient loading and unloading of students, plus one for each 10 students in the 12th grade?
Yes,
And going based on all the information you provided as far as employees and students, that would require approximately 19 spaces.
yes,
And if you were to have the ability to use the sanctuary for the patrons for the performances, that would require 38 spaces based on the calculation in the zoning ordinance.
yes,
So your calculation at a maximum capacity is less than what would be required for the church facility when it would be operational.
yes,
And is that because the ordinance requires a place of worship to have one space per 5 seats in the room of its largest capacity?
yes. That is my understanding.
And if there's pews, there's a mechanism in the zoning ordinance of how to calculate the required number of seats based on the length of the pews.
Yes,
And based on the calculations and you having somebody measure the length of the pews, did that result in a calculation of a parking requirement of 196 spaces?
yes, it did.
How is PYT proposing to handle the loading and unloading of students at the facility?
We hope to use the Worthington Avenue side of the building. There's an entrance there into the sanctuary. So to have the drop off and pickup line come down Worthington with the passenger side facing those doors so that the children can be unloaded and picked up at that point. We do plan to have staff members greet them curbside so that they can be escorted into and out of the building during pickup and drop off. We do currently run our summer camp program that way at the Banana Factory. We do have staff stationed in the parking lot so that as families come through in the morning, they pull up to where the entrance of the Banana Factory is. The staff is there to greet the children, escort them into the building, and then we also escort the children out at the end of the day so the parents do not have to park. We also have run summer camp at the Ice House in Bethlehem. We do similar drop off and pick up that way. They pull into that parking lot, drop their children off at the base of the ramp and kind of swing back around. We have staff out in the parking lot during drop off and pickup.
So the PYT is familiar with establishing a very efficient pickup and drop off routine.
Yes. In fact, during COVID, we kind of had to change it up at the, drop of a dime there. And we were able to think quickly on our feet and create that drop off and pick up at that time. So we're very capable of doing that.
Okay, and I'm going to show you what's in the packet as Exhibit A3. Is A3 just two aerial maps just showing the existing facility and the fact that the property borders on Worthington, Easton Avenue, and Norman Street?
Correct.
And then you had mentioned about the proposed pickup and drop off being on the Worthington side as opposed to the Norman Street and obviously not along Easton Avenue.
Correct. The Norman Street is kind of more of an alleyway, so I don't think it would, and there's not enough exits on that backside of the building.
So it wouldn't
That
provide,
would be safe for the children to
Right.
kind of go in and out of.
so it wouldn't provide safe and efficient means of drop off and pickup.
Correct.
And obviously you want the drop off and pickup to be done as expeditiously as possible since the classes would be starting.
Yes.
I'm also going to show you what we've marked in the package as Exhibit 4. Is Exhibit 4 just showing photos of the existing church facility from various locations, both along Worthington, then along Easton Avenue, and then along Norman Street?
Yes.
And as you look at the photo of the Norman Street, it shows obviously that it's not as wide of a street as the Worthington side.
Correct.
And would it be, and then again, looking at these photographs, there's nowhere on the property that you would be able to locate parking.
Correct.
And you would be proposing to use the building in its existing state as from an external standpoint.
Yes.
I mean, obviously you might be making some improvements, renovations internal
Inside.
to the building, but that would have to get whatever permits are necessary from the city.
Yes.
Because of the existing buildings on the property, are you limited then to being able to not have parking?
We are.
Assuming Not
Yes.
have parking on the site?
Yes.
In your opinion, would continuing use of the property without off-street parking have any negative impact on the surrounding neighborhood?
No.
Is it your understanding that the majority of the residential homes in the neighborhood have garages and driveways, so they would not be adversely impacted by the limited number of people who would potentially park in the surrounding area?
Yes.
In your opinion, would granting the requested relief have any adverse impact on neighboring property values?
No.
And is that because you'd be using an existing building for a similar non-residential purpose?
Yes.
Will the PYT's use be designed and located such that so that public health, safety, welfare, and convenience are protected?
Yes.
Do you believe that the PYT's proposed adaptive reuse of the existing non-residential building would be a benefit to the community?
Yes, I do.
That's all the question I have of Valerie.
Okay. Board, do you have any questions?
No.
No?
Yeah. When it was a church, did just people park in the surrounding neighborhoods?
Yes. That's my understanding. That's what we've been told.
All right.
They that's the only place they
They
would have
could
been able
park,
to-
right?
Yeah.
Right.
I guess that's all I had.
Do you have any idea when it was a church, how many days the church was used and then people came and parked in the neighborhood?
So-
Was there a choir rehearsal, on Monday, and then Sunday was more people, and then Tuesday was something else?
Right. I don't know exactly, but I have been told that there were services on Sundays, but then during the week, they also had a daycare. center in the school portion of the building.
Uh-huh.
So that operated daily. They also had several, meetings and other activities that would happen in that building as well. I don't know, the schedule of, what was operating in there, but I do know they had numerous other
things
meetings
going
and
on.
stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Questions?
Is the 150 number, is that the absolute maximum? So sort of the capacity?
Based on what we observed in terms of counting the pews and the pew space, and then what we would put in there for seating, if we were to convert it to an auditorium, yes, that would be the maximum, would be 150 seats. And also, if you're familiar with the Ice House, that center bank of seating in the Ice House is about 169 seats, but part of that is used for the light and sound board. So we only have about 156 seats in that center section that are usable. And the bulk of our performances do fill, that center section for sure.
Right. So is it 150 attendees plus staff and students, or is the number all inclusive of
It
of
would be
both?
150 plus the staff and students. Yes. Which would still probably amount to less than what the church uses. If we're, say, 20, right, between our staff, you're at 170, which is
Right.
less than the 196.
Yeah, understood. That's all for me.
Okay. Do we have any questions from the audience for this property? No? Any comments? I see none. Okay, we'll go off the record. And
Can we have a motion to enter executive session?
motion?
I'd like to make a
go ahead.
motion to enter executive session.
Second.
There you go.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
This chair was a little low. Oh my gosh, we're way off. Okay, we're back on the record. And Darlene, if you could, oh no, sorry, motion first. I'm ahead of myself.
All
Motion.
all right, I'd like to make a motion to grant the special exception under section 1319.02 B5 to require no off-street parking for Pennsylvania Youth Theater's use of the property.
A second, please.
Second.
Okay, now Darlene, if you'd read the roll, please.
Mr. Schneck,
Yes.
Ms. Ritter,
Yes.
and Ms. Lee.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, your appeal is approved.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you. And the children, thank you.
Next will be 251 Cherokee Street. So just tell us when the property was posted then.
July 11th.
Okay.
We also have a photograph of it in the packet.
Okay, and Darlene, if
Thank you.
you would read the appeal for us, please.
Certainly. It's the appeal for 251 Cherokee Street. It's an appeal of John Noble on behalf of NIP Wilbur LLC, who is seeking a use variance to convert an existing medical and one dwelling unit building into a 7-room hotel. The applicant also seeks a dimensional variance to exceed the maximum allowable area for a freestanding sign. 8 square feet is permitted, 24 square feet is proposed, and a dimensional variance to decrease the minimum setback between parking lot and the curb line. 15 feet is required, 12 feet is proposed. This is located in the RG Medium Density Residential Zoning District.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd again note for the record that the application and board materials will be marked as zoning hearing board exhibit 1.
Okay, proceed, please.
Again, Kate Durso from Fitzpatrick, Lenz and Buba here on behalf of the applicant. Can you state your name for the record
John Noble,
and spell your last name?
Noble.
And Mr. Noble, are you a principal in NIP Wilbur LLC?
Yes, I am.
And were you responsible for posting the property?
Yes, I was.
And I'm just going to show you what's in the exhibit package is Exhibit 1. Is Exhibit 1 a copy of the posting of the property?
Yes, it is.
And you stated previously that you posted the property on July 11th. Is that
Correct.
correct? Thank you. And is the subject property located at the corner of West 3rd and Cherokee Streets?
Yes, it is.
And it's identified as 251 Cherokee Street?
Yes.
And it's approximately 6,600 square feet in size?
The whole lot. Yes,
The whole lot, yes. And located in the medium-density residential zoning district?
that's correct.
And what physically is currently located on the property?
Currently, there's a 3-story building. that's-
Sorry, is the microphone working? I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Oh, it should be on.
We'll move it closer.
Okay,
Is that better?
thank you.
Okay. Currently, it's a 3-story building. The first floor and the basement are used by a orthopedist who has been there for decades. And then the upper 2 floors are a 4-bedroom, 2-bath apartment.
And then I'm going to show you what's marked in the exhibit package is Exhibit A2. Is Exhibit A2 just photograph of well, first is the front of the building.
So that the 2 photographs that were put into exhibit is the building, and then to the left of the building is a 2-car garage that's on the property also.
And that's depicted in the second page of the exhibit.
That's correct.
And does that, or how do people who use that building currently park?
So currently, there's no off-street parking. the garage there is a small garage, and the driveway is actually not long enough to actually park without blocking the sidewalk. So the employees of the doctor and his patients all parked on the street on Cherokee, and also the tenant upstairs parked on Cherokee Street.
And can you describe to the zoning hearing board your proposed use of the property?
So the proposed use of the property is converting the building into 7 hotel rooms that will actually be an annex to the Wilbur Mansion, which already exists right down the street on Cherokee. It's also similar to what the Sayer Mansion did when they bought the carriage house right next to their property also. So the block is formed by Wyandotte, Cherokee, Brighton, and Third. Basically has 2 hotels at this point, the Wilbur Mansion and the Sayer Mansion. So a significant portion of that entire block is currently hotel.
And your company owns the Wilbur Mansion Inn.
That's correct.
And what is the address of that on Cherokee Street?
The address on Cherokee is 201 Cherokee Street.
And this is meant to supplement and provide additional hotel space.
That's correct.
And what is the Wilbur Mansion Inn currently used for?
The Wilbur Mansion is currently a 9-room hotel, restaurant, bar, event center. And so we're looking to add 7 more hotel rooms to that venue.
And will they be similarly constructed as the Wilbur Mansion Inn rooms?
Very, very much so. The exterior of the building will be in keeping what we did with the Wilbur Mansion. Color schemes will be the same. Signage will be the same. The way we renovate the rooms will be the same. So the goal is to keep a significant architectural feature of the current building that you're looking at up top. Color scheme it so that it matches the Wilbur Mansion. And then within the Fountain Hill Historic Overlay District, we're trying to keep that historical architectural feel.
And will there be any on-site employees?
No. So this is an annex. The way we currently do our hotel rooms is we find out when the guest is coming in, we greet the guests, take them to the rooms. They are then given access codes to the building. So the building that we're going to be doing here on 251 will be a full lockdown building. All the rooms will have access codes and the exterior doors will have access codes. So the guests will be greeted when they get there, but they'll know there won't be an on-site person there at all times.
And whoever does the housekeeping at Wilbur Mansion Inn will be doing the housekeeping at
Correct.
what I'll call the annex building.
Right. Same housekeepers will just basically come up here and do the rooms that are up top.
And are you proposing off-street parking?
So currently everything's on-street parking. And one of the aspects that I liked about this building was we had the ability to design a full parking facility where the 2-car garage is, and we were able to get 7 parking spots. So we not only meet the zoning code for spots, but it also makes it so that all of our guests have a place to park off-street dedicated, so that it'll actually free up a fair bit of parking that's on Cherokee Street at that corner.
I'm going to show you what's marked in the package as Exhibit A3. Is Exhibit A3 a copy of the sketch plan that was submitted with the zoning materials?
Correct. That's actually a fully engineered plan. We had Terraform design the plan fully so that the actual parking facility itself is fully code compliant with handicap parking, space sizes, drive aisles. I might be getting ahead of myself, but the relief we're seeking is actually so that we can slide this parking facility slightly closer to the street and create a slightly bigger buffer in the back for the neighbor Patty, who I was able to talk to and tell her what we were doing. And I wanted to pick up the 3 feet so we could put a little bit better vegetation in the back, give her a little bit better buffer.
And is the proposed parking shown on Exhibit A3?
Yes,
And it's part of the plan?
part of the plan, part of the exhibit, and that's what we will build.
And when you're talking about the potential additional buffer area, that's just the strip that's not shaded on that
Correct.
exhibit?
There's a cross-hatched strip on the backside, so we were able to increase that size by 3 feet.
And then part of your relief also relates to having a freestanding sign. What is the purpose of the freestanding sign?
So at this point right now, with the acquisition of this property, I'll basically own the entire east side of Cherokee Street for the entire block. And so what I would like to do is do a sign which is exactly in keeping of what we did for the Wilbur Views apartment building and then the entrance into the Wilbur Mansion itself.
I'm going to show you what's marked as Exhibit 4. Is Exhibit 4 a copy of a stamped sign plan that was submitted with the application materials?
Yeah, so this is the actual permitted plan that we got when we went for our sign permit. And also we had received a sign variance for the other two signs that are currently there.
So this is showing the address of the Wilbur Mansion?
Correct.
And
Yep.
you would be proposing a similar type of sign at this property?
The exact same sign.
Exact same. And it would be located at similarly situated close to the ground?
We would set it next to the driveway entrance into the parking facility and also lower it slightly lower than the permit signs show. I brought some pictures of the two existing signs, if you'd like to see what we did for the two other properties.
Is the board familiar with the existing Wilbur sign?
Yeah, we approved it a little bit back, and
Okay.
they're not lit or anything. It's,
We do low lighting that only.
yeah, but it's
only
not
the face.
internally lit or
No.
anything. It's just,
Nope.
And you would.
They'll be the exact same sign, same
Yeah, I
lighting we currently use.
remember, yeah.
Okay, and then, and it's the sign, why is the sign necessary?
To identify the property so that our guests know exactly where to go and go in.
In your opinion, would granting the requested variances to permit the use, sign, and parking setback change the character of the area?
No, it'd be very much similar to the character of the area. The entire, actually, if we do all of those things, then the entire block will be very consistent.
Are you requesting the minimum relief necessary to change the use of the property and be able to have the sign to identify it and provide the on-site parking?
Yes, I am.
Is a hardship created by the property based on the existing building and its location on the property?
I believe so, yes.
In your opinion, would granting the requested relief substantially injure neighboring property values?
No, I don't believe so.
Will the use of the property be designed so that public health, safety, welfare, and convenience are protected?
Absolutely.
In your opinion, is the property unique in that it's located in an area where there are numerous non-residential uses, including the existing Wilbur Mansion Inn and the apartment, and then the adjacent Wilbur use?
That's correct, yes.
And is this property also unique in that it has two different uses, currently a medical office on the first floor and then apartments above?
That's correct.
That is all the question I have, Mr. Noble.
Okay. You have questions?
Yeah, yes. Where's the is the doctor moving out or is,
Yeah, so he,
Yeah,
really
we
nice
have to-
guy. He ends up doing a lot of work, is now remote, where he goes to nursing homes and those kind of facilities. So he was having his patients, but as he saw how things were progressing, he ended up actually the way he described it to me, it was something he had been contemplating for years.
did that used to be a hospice house years ago?
So
Rehab
I
out
don't
of
know that far back, but it has been a podiatrist for decades
Oh, okay.
because he bought the building from another
hmm
podiatrist that was there.
Okay, thank you.
Well, actually, he didn't own the building. He was a tenant.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Pete, you there?
I think I'm okay.
You all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you there?
Questions on this end?
No.
No
not
questions?
usually.
Any questions from the audience for this property? Comments? Okay, do you have any final comments?
I think I know you have a long agenda, so we will just submit our exhibits into evidence. And I think that Mr. Noble's testimony has adequately supported the grant of the requested relief.
Okay. All right, I need a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make the
Motion.
motion.
I'll second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
All
Aye.
in favor, aye. We shall return. I'll try and sit in the right chair next. Okay, Darlene, we're back on the record.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to grant the use variance to convert an existing medical one dwelling unit into a 7-room hotel. I'd also like to make a motion to grant the dimensional variance to exceed the maximum allowable area for the
Let's
free.
do 'em one at a time.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, and
Oh,
then
and vote.
do a vote. So we'll retract, go back to the hotel motion. And I need a second.
Second.
You call the roll, Darlene.
Ms. Ritter,
Yes.
Mr. Schneck,
Yes.
Ms. Lee.
Yes. Part 2, motion.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to grant the dimensional variance to exceed the maximum allowable area for a freestanding side, 8 square foot permitted, 20 square foot proposed,
24.
24 square foot proposed.
A second. Second.
Ms. Ritter,
Yes.
Mr. Schneck,
Yes.
Ms. Lee.
Yes.
I'd also like to make a motion to grant the dimensional variance to decrease the minimum setback between the parking and the curb line, 15 feet required, 12 feet proposed.
Second.
Mr. Schneck,
Yes.
Ms. Ritter,
Yes.
Ms. Lee.
Yes.
Thank you
Okay,
very
your
much.
appeals are all approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thanks.
I'll be looking for it. I live at the other end of Cherokee.
Take a little bit of time, but we'll get there.
It's okay.
Thank you, board.
No, thank you.
Sub out.
You guys
Good to
want
see
a break or
everyone. Good to
anything?
see you, Darlene.
Fine.
You too, you too. Thank you for your help.
See you later.
That's this.
I did.
That letter.
Next, we'll hear from 1411, 1435 Greenview Drive. Hi, Steve.
Hello.
We welcome attorney Steve Boel for this appeal and ongoing appeals.
Ongoing appeals.
Yep.
All right.
We got pictures.
Thanks. You'll mark
Thank
these,
you.
or, well, yeah.
Awesome.
Oh,
Oh, I see how it might work.
okay, yeah. I mean,
If you would tell us when the property was posted.
The property was posted on July 16th, and on the date of posting, a copy was sent to the City of Bethlehem zoning office as well. And
Okay,
it is marked as A1 in the packet.
thank you. Okay, you can proceed.
Yes, good evening. My name is Victor Scamilio. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. And if I can give a little context about where we are historically in this project and what we're asking for, that may give some insight as to the relief requested. My clients purchased this property in December of 2023. They submitted and were approved for the permitted use of 6 individual structures that have 4 townhomes in each to create 24 townhome style units in this project. That is permitted by right. They did not submit a request for other structures like a 3-story apartment complex that could have been located in there. Rather, they proceeded with the units as depicted in the picture that's above. Each of the 6 units was 76 feet in length. When they began the engineering and the development of the project, they realized that there was an issue with the introduction of water into the facility. And they have met with city fire department, and they are proposing to bring 1 water line in and then to branch out to each side. That necessitates the introduction of what I'll call a utility shed, and you'll see it marked on the exhibits as a sprinkler room that will have shut off individual isolation valves for the water for each of the units. By having that utility shed, it in essence connects technically each building. By right, they are permitted to not exceed 120 feet in length. These connecting utility rooms increase it to 240 feet in length. What I can also do is tell you what this request does not do. This request does not increase livable space in the units, does not increase storage for the development. It does not change the overall plan of the buildings. And what I mean by that is the roof line will remain as submitted in the previous submission and approval by the city. All it does is add these units that are 6 feet in width to each of the buildings and technically connects them, but does not increase any of the density, parking, or any other aspect of this development. So hopefully that gives a little bit of context of why we're here and why the relief is being sought.
I see it. It's in between.
And with that, I would move to the applicant and this representative, Dominic Villani. Sir, please state your name for the record.
Dominic A. Villani Jr.
And you are a principal of the owner?
Yes,
Okay. And you purchased this property in December of 2023?
correct.
And what was your request of or submission to the township for approval at that time?
We submitted a plan which was 24 units. We didn't seek any density variances to do, as you stated earlier, be 6 buildings, 3 on each side of a proposed road, which contained 4 units in each building.
And then what happened during the engineering and development phase?
We realized that I've worked in other municipalities, and we realized that the city required a fire line and a domestic line in each unit. In case of a fire, or if somebody doesn't pay the bill, the fire line does not get shut off. Having said that, that presents a congestive issue with 2 water lines, a sidewalk, and a sewer line in a small area. So on the advice of our engineer and our sprinkler contractor, we are proposing to run a line into a utility room, as you earlier stated, which the water shutoffs and everything, if there's a fire, will be in one designated area. We had a meeting consequently with the fire chief, and he was very supportive of it. He just insisted that there has to be isolation valves, which our sprinkler contractor is very familiar with and which we're going to implement.
Okay. And your submission to the zoning hearing board does not alter the main living area of the plans that was submitted to the city for approval for the development, correct?
Correct.
And you have maintained the roof line that you had in your earlier submission to the city, correct?
Correct.
I'm going to direct your attention to exhibits A3 and A4 that we've submitted tonight to the zoning hearing board. And A3 is more of a panoramic view of each of a typical unit that you would develop.
Correct.
And adjacent to each side of the unit in the exhibit are 2 small sprinkler rooms.
Correct.
And A4 is a focused view of that sprinkler room.
Right.
And on each sprinkler room, would there be what is known as a knock box?
Yes.
And so the board knows that provides the fire department access to that room to get to the valves in each sprinkler room.
Correct.
And that sprinkler room would not include any livable space or storage space for any of the occupants, correct?
Correct.
And although connected to each building, that sprinkler room would not have a pass-through. What I mean by that is an occupant cannot pass from one building to the next through that sprinkler room, correct?
Correct.
It is just solely to isolate the valves and their shut-off components, correct?
Yes,
And it would be heated and maintained so that we would not encounter any issues with freezing in the winter.
correct.
And it provides a safer environment for the fire department to gain easy access to these systems.
Correct.
Okay. And your roof line, everything else in the rendering that's up on the board is what you have submitted to the city when your plan was previously approved.
Yes,
And your previous submission did not require any zoning relief.
that's right.
The only reason we're here today are those 6-foot in length utility rooms.
Correct.
Okay. And what is the reason for doing the 6 buildings with 4 units rather than an apartment building?
When we first purchased the property, the Church of the Manger had placed the property for sale. We viewed the property. We came to an agreement, and in meeting with the principals of the church, they were concerned with the existing neighborhood, as were we. We're from Bethlehem. We want to be good neighbors, and they were concerned about the height of the building. Probably 9 out of 10 developers would just put a 3-story building here without any variances. It would be a lot cheaper. My brother and I looked at it as a long-term investment, and we determined that we would put townhouses here that would keep the building height down and blend into the neighborhood.
And the dimensions of the units that were previously submitted and approved to the township remain the same in this submission here today.
They're identical.
And I have no further questions of Mr. Villani.
Okay. Questions?
Yeah. Yes. So explain to me exactly what is happening in the sprinkler room. So somebody has a fire and then the sprinklers automatically go on?
So yes, so what happens, these units are separate entrances. So each one lives like a house.
Okay.
There's a sprinkler system in each unit. So if there's a fire, the sprinkler goes off. In addition to that, we have a sprinkler alarm system that will notify the fire department and notify the owner. So what happens is when the fire department comes, they go right to that room and they isolate where there's a fire. They either shut water off in the adjacent one next to it. It's a lot easier, given, like I mentioned before, the congestion of all the water lines. But it's approved. We use it now in apartment buildings, and we use it in other municipalities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pete, you have anything?
Yeah, sure. Are these going to be rentals?
Yes.
All right, so you're going to be maintaining the
Yes.
rooms and the regular inspections is all
Absolutely. Yes.
in you're doing this to cut down on the congestion of the main lines going into the buildings. Where would they typically be if you had main lines in each?
These,
And we have our engineer that will have a schematic to show you the difference between the two.
Okay, it appears that what you're saying, I think is accurate, in which the fire department is going to know exactly where to go when they arrive.
Right.
So that's kind of the point of this question. Normally, these valves would be within the units.
With either within the units or
the valves. So what happens is if there's a fire, the sprinkler system goes off. So these are 2-bedroom units, which we brought the floor plans as well to show you. They're 2-bedroom units, and so the sprinkler would go off where the affected area is. Fire department comes, they go right to the sprinkler room, and there will be valves there that indicate which pod that it's in, and they can shut it off or turn, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's rather than them going finding it, turn in a valve box where they go right, they have a key, they go right in and they shut it off.
I guess my question is, if you didn't have the rooms, where would you put the shut-off valves?
My,
Oh,
my
okay.
engineer
We'll
has
have to wait
actually a
for the
plan
engineer.
for that.
All right.
But to answer your question, they would go, they would go in front of the building, but the problem we have is they would have to go in a closet area, and we would have to put the sprinkler apparatus in a closet area. Well, when we have two water lines, a sewer line coming out, and a sidewalk in a building that doesn't have a lot of frontage, it gets too congested. Consequently, down the road, if there's ever a leak or something like that, it would be very difficult to dig up and do a lot of damage. So we thought about it, and this is, we feel, is the best way.
Cool. And then in your rendering, you show a sidewalk to the sprinkler rooms?
Yes.
And the plan, it doesn't look like the sidewalk goes. Do you plan on putting a sidewalk?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
That's all I have.
Okay, good. Any questions, Steve? Okay, does anyone in the audience have any questions for Mr. Villani before we call the engineer? Any comments? Okay, we'll
Sure.
switch to your engineer.
Yep.
Good evening.
Sir, please state your name.
Joseph Renko.
And Mr. Renko, what is your occupation?
I'm a civil engineer in the state of Pennsylvania
And are you employed?
through my own business, Black Forest Engineering.
And have you been employed to do the drawings and the engineering work for the Villani project here, 1411 Greenview?
So yeah, correct. I did the land development plans. I don't do the intricate mechanical designs on the inside sprinkler systems, and that's a specific professional who does that. But I'm responsible for the buildings, and then obviously the sprinkler room that adds to the zoning coverages and
Sure.
things.
And what are the dimensions of each of the sprinkler rooms? Do you
It's
remember?
approximately 6 by 8,
And how high?
8 feet.
Okay. And what is in each sprinkler room?
So there's a series of there's two pipes that would come up from the concrete. There'd be a domestic line that then would feed what I heard somebody say they called that a pod. There'd be a domestic that would feed the domestic lines to all the pods, and then there's a fire line that goes into a series of, I guess, isolation valves. Basically, why it's useful is it's a very accessible and easily findable location for if there's a fire that the fire department could come and they know right where to go. It's like a Knox box, I think, but there's a key that they have access to. They could get into it. They determine where they need more pressure. They could shut certain of the pods down and then leave other ones on.
And on the rendering here, we have the sprinkler room noted with a sign, sprinkler room. Is that how it is intended to be developed, with that sign?
Yeah, I believe that's a code issue. They have to be clearly marked and identified.
Okay. And you have a line drawing that shows the water line as it would come in under the plan that would facilitate these sprinkler rooms, correct?
Yeah. So just to back up really quick, I am more of the site guy. So what was important to me is just how difficult, we have to do stakeout when people are doing construction. So somebody's going to be in charge of installing all these utilities and laterals. So I put together a quick plan to show what our approved plan looks like. And I think it is going to be very challenging for, I don't have to do the building stuff, but I do feel bad for whoever would have to do it. But I brought a plan to show how simplified the utilities look with this proposal. I'll be more than happy to share this with everyone in the audience as well. But
So what are we looking at here, this first page?
so the way that this is what we're here for tonight for the relief, because we're essentially putting these sprinkler rooms in, which I just drew in with a pen. But this is basically a main line, 8-inch that comes off the line in Greenview Drive. And what happens then is the line splits. We'll call it a mini main. It splits left and right into the first two sprinkler rooms. And then beyond that, all the water runs through through the building foundations and into the second subsequent sprinkler rooms. So it basically alleviates having an additional main and several laterals, which I can show you on the next plan.
So just, okay, let's go to the next point.
So this is what was approved. It was a plan that has an 8-inch main that comes off Greenview Drive. It ends at the end of the parking lot at a fire hydrant. And then we have 24 1-inch water laterals that come just to about the sidewalk. And then they split into 2 lines, a domestic and a fire line at each unit. So there's going into each of the buildings, all like behind the sidewalk, there's 48 small water laterals. So
And then again, if we go back to the scenario, if there were a fire, in the situation on the second page here, it would be, the fire department would have to locate water or fire line for each unit and then make that determination of what to be cut off or not to increase pressure for other aspects.
exactly, there's multiple locations where the fire department would have to go to access to shut down, quote unquote ponds. So
And this is a more simplified layout, and this is a layout that you've used and designed in other locations, other municipalities?
yeah, so some of the other municipalities outside the city, specifically Upper Macungie Township, Lower Macungie Township, working with their fire chief and the Lehigh County Authority, they're in charge of the water in those outer municipalities. This is the design that they seem to be gravitating towards.
And in these sheds here, these sprinkler rooms, is there any livable space in there?
No,
Any storage space in there?
absolutely not. It is storage space. It's storage space for emergency fire equipment. And that's why the fire departments really do seem to like it.
But nothing for the
No,
occupants or
no.
anything?
Not the owner, not the occupants, it's strictly fire.
And in the change from not having these sprinkler rooms to including them, it doesn't change the layout, the density, or anything associated with this project that you had previously submitted?
It doesn't, removing all these lines doesn't, it doesn't allow us to squeeze any more units on the side or anything like that. It really just, again, my concern is, other than safety, is construction, and I think they're gonna be somebody's nightmare to have to install those lines and maintain them in perpetuity.
How would the key system work for fire department, plural?
So I may
I
be
mean,
looking
who
at
would,
it.
I mean,
So there is what's.
20
I
keys,
think it's the industry name, is maybe the brand, it's called a
Code?
knockbox.
okay,
And the knockbox is there on the side, and the fire department has access to that. It then unlocks it, and they are able to get into the sprinkler room.
it doesn't matter like what fire department, what person.
It's a universal thing.
Oh, universe.
Each fire department has like a special key.
It's designed that nobody
There's a
has,
special keyway.
it's designed so that immediately someone has access. Every fire department has access to it. They all have the same key. They all hit it. Some of them are electronic, actually. They hit it, it pops open, they open the door, they get the equipment.
Yeah, if they don't have to go search for owners. Somebody
And
that
even to
maintains
get
it.
into the room, same, that's what,
That's what allows them in the room.
okay, and then once they're in there, they have access
There's
to
access
everything.
Every valve.
Okay,
Yeah, there's normally keys inside the box and then they take the key out.
just asking, I have no clue how this
No,
works.
it's a good question. It's a weird.
Like illogical to say
Those
there's
gates,
100 keys.
those gates, when we do those fire gates, those emergency access gates, they have the same thing. So the
Kind of
fire
like my
trucks-
generator. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
Do
okay.
do you have domestic water in there too? Is there a domestic water shut off?
So in those sprinkler rooms,
Yeah.
I said there's
Two-
two pipes come up. The domestic goes off freely, and then
The fire.
fire is isolated with, several of these valves.
So you'll be able to shut off each unit individually within that room as well.
There's one spot to go.
Okay. Any questions? Do you have anything?
Victor, anything else for your witness?
No, nothing else.
Okay, do you have any final comments? sir?
No, I think it's fairly straightforward. It's just adding these 6 feet increments and in 4 locations on this project. That technically makes it longer than the dimensions require, but doesn't add to any of the concerns that the ordinance may have about livable space and storage and density.
Okay. And any questions? The audience? Are there any comments?
I just want one more question.
Pete has one more
Do
question.
you have to put a sprinkler head in that room?
I don't know the answer.
All right. I
That
mean,
might
it's
be
not.
one for the owner.
All right.
I mean, I know that there's IBC, there's a code that governs how those are designed, so.
You did say it was
I'm getting
heated,
the
so
the nod that yes, there would
Yeah,
be,
it's
and there
heated.
will be in development.
cool.
Okay. Okay, I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, we're back on the record. If I can get a motion.
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to grant the variance, the dimensional variance, with the condition that it be built in a manner consistent with the testimony provided.
Second.
Hey, darling.
Mr. Schneck,
Yes.
Ms. Ritter,
Yes.
Ms. Lee.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
So.
Okey dokey. Yeah. Next appeal is that of 1315 Lenox Avenue.
I'm going to say they were here for the other one. Don't let it get forced in the mouth.
I don't know.
Hello there. How are
You
you?
got the papers. Okay,
I got everything.
okay. Oh, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
You tell us when the property was posted, please.
Yes, the property was posted on July 15th, 2024 by the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
So, are we reading the notices or?
Well, do you want to read that first or you want to read your thing?
Well,
Which thing?
so let's read the notice first.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the appeal for 1315 Lenox Avenue. It is the appeal of Vito Spinelli on behalf of Anbellino Holdings LLC to demolish a single-family detached dwelling, an accessory garage, and construct two-family semi-detached dwellings, which requires a dimensional variance to reduce the minimum tract size. 6,000 square feet is required, 3,520 square feet existing. And to reduce the minimum lot area per dwelling unit, 3,000 square feet is required, 1,760 square feet is proposed. This lot is located in the RT High Density Residential Zoning District.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Bowell. I'm the zoning hearing board solicitor. I see that we may have some interested parties in the audience, so we just wanted to give a brief overview of how it's going to work. The applicant tonight is represented by counsel, Mr. Piperato. The applicant will put on their case. And as you've seen throughout the evening, it's kind of like a court where they'll ask questions. When they're done asking their questions, the board chair will open it up for if you have any questions. At that point, it is not designed for public comment. It is designed that if you have a factual question about the case at that point, you ask that question then. Once the applicant is done presenting their case, at that point, the board chair will open it up for public comment, where if you have any comments you want to provide or any testimony you want to provide at that opportunity, you have the opportunity to do so at that time. We also want to emphasize, we always do this, that at the end is the stenographer who is currently making a record of the case. We ask for her benefit that only one person speak at a time. And that, again, please make sure you're at the microphone and identify yourself by name and address before you speak. So with that, Ms. Lee.
Okay.
Thank you. Julia, would you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Yep, my name is, can you hear me okay? Yeah. My name is Julia Tallarico Spinelli, Spinelli.
And Julia, are you a member of an entity known as Avellino Holdings LLC?
Yes, I'm one of two members with my husband, Vito Spinelli, who's sitting behind me.
All right. And Avellino Holdings LLC purchased 1315 Lenox Avenue in the city of Bethlehem in November of 2023. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Can you tell the board members a little bit about Avellino Holdings LLC and your purchase of this property, but more specifically, how you and Vito invest in properties in the city?
Yep. So just to give a little bit of background, I was born and raised in Bethlehem. I was born in St. Luke's Hospital in Fountain Hill. I grew up here. I never really left just for law school. I'm an attorney. My husband owns The Brick in downtown Bethlehem. So he's very, very involved with the community as far as just, donating, serving food to many, many, many people. He's very involved. So we started purchasing properties a couple years ago for, just kind of to have workforce housing mostly. We don't advertise our properties on Zillow. We don't post them. Everyone that we rent to, we know. And largely we've kept our rents significantly below market for Bethlehem. So we came across to talk about how we came across this property. I think it went for sale in July 2023, for $250. It started at 250. Due to the condition of the house, it sat for probably 5 or 6 months at the height of the global real estate market. We purchased it in November 2023 for $60,000 below its original list price. Made an offer. There were no competing offers, and that's how we got the house.
Real quick, you mentioned workforce housing. Has it been your experience and your husband's experience that it's difficult to find employees housing in the area?
Yes. So there have been numerous instances where Vito has tried to, we get, his business is obviously pizza. He makes the pizza most of the time, but actually making pizza is a skill. And so to get people, we've gotten numerous people who have applied from New York and New Jersey. And they say, hey, like, we want to move to Bethlehem, but we're having trouble finding housing. So there have been numerous instances where we've tried to work to find people who want to move here to work at Brick Housing, and it just hasn't worked out, unfortunately.
And so your plan was to purchase this property and renovate the existing single-family dwelling. Is that correct?
Yes, 100%. That's why we purchased it.
And during that process and seeking comments and estimates from builders, you learned that the cost of renovating the property is substantial, is it not?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, I want to start with, if I may, a couple of exhibits, and let's do them in order, and look at Exhibit A in the package before you.
Okay.
Exhibit A is the application that was filed by you and your husband for 1315 Lenox Avenue. And in that application, we are requesting a special exception to convert a single-family dwelling into more than one unit. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
In fact, in the event that the house is removed or raised, it would not be the conversion of an existing dwelling. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I agree.
And there are two dimensional variances that are being requested as well. And that would be the dimensional variance from the lot area requirement of 6,000 square feet and also the 3,000 square feet per dwelling unit requirement. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
There is a narrative that is attached to that zoning application identified as Exhibit A, which has identified some of the rationale and reasoning why we believe the variances should be granted. Is that your understanding?
Yep, that's my understanding.
And the next page is actually the computer printout from the Northampton County Tax Assessment Office regarding 1315 Lenox Avenue, and that identifies Avellino Holdings LLC as the owner of that property. And I think it indicates that you bought that property in November of 2023. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
The existing single-family dwelling is identified as approximately 1,432 square feet. Is that also your understanding?
Yes, that sounds correct.
Okay. If you'll follow me now to Exhibit B, I'd like to have you look at a couple of sections of the City of Bethlehem zoning ordinance, if you will. Under Article 1304, the notice has identified the property being located in the RT residential district, correct?
Yes.
All right. And there are certain uses that are permitted by right, certain uses that are permitted by special exception, and certain uses that are not permitted in various zoning districts, including the RT district.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
I want to call your attention to the highlighted area, which identifies by number 1 residential uses. And do you see where there's an entry, single-family semi-detached dwelling, side-by-side twin?
Yep.
All
And
right. First of all, is that the type of dwelling that you are proposing for the subject property?
yes, that's correct.
And when you follow the category over to the RT district, does it contain the letter P?
Yes.
And when you look at the bottom of the page identified as page 29, does the P indicate that the use is permitted by right?
Yes.
And so in the event that you were to raise the single-family dwelling, the single-family semi-detached dwelling is a use that's permitted by right in the RT district. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so that the board members know, we are not seeking a use variance for this particular application.
No.
If the city's or the board's interpretation is that this is the conversion of an existing one-family dwelling into 2 or more dwelling units, do you see the entry that is permitted by special exception in the RT district?
Yes.
Are you intending with this application to keep the existing dwelling?
No.
If you'll turn to the next page, if you will. These are the dimensional requirements for uses within the RT district, in particular subsection 4. First of all, the highlighted section indicates a single-family semi-detached dwelling. Is that correct? You see that area?
Yes.
What is the tract size that is required?
6,000 square feet.
And is that one of the dimensional variances that we are requesting this evening?
Yes.
And the next category is identified as lot area per dwelling unit at 3,000 square feet per dwelling unit. Is that the second dimensional variance that we are seeking this evening?
Yes.
If you go on top of the single-family semi-detached dwelling entry and look at single-family detached dwelling, what is the lot tract size requirement for a single-family detached dwelling?
4,000 square feet.
Is your property currently less than 4,000 square feet?
Yes.
Look at all of the categories that are listed in the RT district, and in particular, look at the tract size. Does the lot that you currently own meet the tract size for any of the uses that are permitted within the RT district?
No.
And so therefore, if you were to raise the single-family dwelling to construct a new single-family dwelling on the property, you would be required to obtain a variance because you do not meet the 4,000 square feet requirement. Is that your understanding?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, has a history to this property, and I believe you and or your husband had made a right to know request with the city of Bethlehem to obtain certain records pertaining to the past use of this property. It is your understanding that this property has been a rental property for many years.
Yes, that's my understanding.
And did the records that we received from the city of Bethlehem indicate that the property had been a rental property for many years?
Yes.
And I'm just calling your attention to just one of those that we took out of all of those documents, and that is identified as Exhibit C. And does that indicate a regulated rental unit occupancy for 1315 Lenox Avenue?
Yes, it does.
Now, this particular one is dated in October of 2013. Is it your understanding that this property was occupied as a rental unit all the way up to the time that the property was listed for sale?
Yes, it's my understanding that based on my conversation with a neighbor that the house was very recently occupied, and I believe it was occupied right up until it was put for sale in July 2023.
To the best of your knowledge, how many bedrooms does the existing dwelling contain?
I believe with the attic, like with the third floor bedroom, it's 5.
All right. And was there evidence that there were individuals residing in the attic bedroom?
I believe so at some point, yes.
Okay. And what you are proposing this evening are essentially 2 twins, and you're proposing 2 bedrooms in each one of those twins?
Correct, with 2.5 bathrooms in each side.
And so the proposal would be a reduction in 1 bedroom for what currently exists at this property?
Yes, that's correct.
The existing dwelling, does the property contain any off-street parking?
No, it does not.
And so therefore, the 2 spots that would be required for the single-family dwelling, it is non-conforming as it is to parking requirements.
Yes.
So the existing dwelling, or the existing lot, is non-conforming as to tract size, and it's non-conforming also as it pertains to required parking.
Yes, that's correct.
And we'll get to this a little bit later, but does your proposal provide off-street parking, the required off-street parking for the 2 proposed units?
Yes, 2 spots per unit, so 4 total spots.
So you are resolving the nonconformity as it pertains to the off-street parking.
Yes.
If you'll turn your attention to Exhibit D, is this what you wanted me to begin to start going through with Vito?
Yeah, I'm going to turn it over to Vito now.
All right. Well, we have to stay here for a minute and see if there's any questions from any of the board members in the
Any
audience.
questions? Questions?
I'm good for right now.
Okay,
Fine?
thank you.
Are you okay, Steve?
Yep, audience.
Any questions from the audience?
All right, thank you. Vito, you want to come up? You want to speak into that microphone? And Vito, do you want to state your name and spell your last name for the record, please?
Vito Spinelli, and then Spinelli.
And Vito, you are the second member in Avellino Holdings LLC. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And Julia has taken us through a little bit of the history of when you purchased the property in November of 2023. Before I ask you specific questions regarding the property, is there anything you want to add as to the length of time the property was on the market and how it came about that you purchased it?
We were originally looking for a house for some of my employees to live in. It's been becoming difficult, I think, since COVID for them to afford some of the housing in the city of Bethlehem. And we've been looking for something that's a walkable distance, under a mile from our business. And that's when we discovered this property here on Lenox Avenue. It was sitting on the market. And the other thing that we made sure we didn't want to compete with any first-time home buyers. So we were looking for a property that needed some renovations, that someone couldn't go in there and just, live in without doing any work, right? So we didn't want to compete with anyone that didn't own a house already. And like I said, that's how we came across this property.
And essentially, when you initially put the bid in, I think you probably, if you want to explain to the board, had a certain expectation as to what those renovations were going to be. Is that correct?
Yeah, we had an idea of, what we needed to do originally until we started meeting with some contractors, some expert contractors.
All right. I want to go through some photographs, and we don't have to go through all of them, but I'd like to at least go through the exterior photographs that are identified in Exhibit D with the board members and have you take a look and maybe describe it. And let's start with the first one, because this picture really identifies the two structures that exist on the property. Is that correct?
Yes.
So there's not only a single family dwelling on this property, there is also a separate structure to the rear of the property.
Yes.
And I believe between the two of them, it appears to be lawn or grass or weeds. So as Julia indicated, there is no off-street parking for this particular dwelling. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Why don't you just explain to the board members what the two buildings are?
All right. So the main house is a five-bedroom house, 5 bedroom, 2 baths house, and with a basement as well. And then there's a shed, garage, outhouse, if what you want to call it, that currently has, for reasons that we do not know, it has electricity, it has water, has some type of old wood stove in there, has an old sink in there. So we're not sure what that was being used for.
In fact, we, during our right to know request, we received documentation from the city, but none of that documentation indicated that there were any permits granted for any particular uses in that garage. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Could you tell the board members whether or not it was used for parking for this property?
It's not for parking.
Okay. If we go to the second picture again, this is just more of a close-up of the garage building that we'll refer to it as.
Yes.
All right. And is it your intent to remove this structure as well?
Yes.
Would you explain to the board members what the third, as you got into the meeting with contractors out at the building, did they explain certain things to you as they began to discover what was wrong with this property?
Yeah, so originally I met with several contractors, smaller local contractors, and unfortunately a few of them told me that this project would be too large for them to take on, as they don't have the manpower to take on this big of a project. So I was struggling to find a contractor. I would call other contractors and they would say this project is either too small or too big, until I met Dominic Del Grasso of Del Grasso Construction Incorporated. And he met me at the site and we walked through the property, and then he started to point out several structural issues with the property.
Right now, this property is vacant, correct?
Yes.
And it was vacant for a period of time prior to you purchasing it.
Yes, we believe some point a little bit before July when the property was listed.
And before we start going through some of the pictures, in your opinion, does this property present like an attractive nuisance that, there's potential risk involved with people going upon this property?
Yes.
All right. Would you tell the board members what the third picture depicts and what you were advised by the contractor?
So the third picture depicts a large chimney with a wood fireplace inside the house. And what we didn't know until, he came on site, and you can see these black marks going up the chimney, connecting to the siding of the house, that at some point they tried to patch with some type of tar material the chimney to the actual house. And so he indicated to me that the chimney is actually structurally starting to detach from the home.
Did he indicate what, if anything, would have to be done to correct it?
We would have to remove it and do a lot of structural concrete work along the foundation.
Okay. Could you identify for the board members what the next picture depicts?
This is the front stairway into the entry of the front of the house.
And what work would need to be done to that area in order to bring it up to code?
We would need to pretty much remove all that concrete. We would have to redo the structural posts as well in the front of the house, as that's all starting to rot and crack.
And is that depicted in the next picture as well, along with some separation of some of the block area from the foundation?
Yes.
Is that all areas that Mr. Del Grasso indicated to you that would either have to be removed or replaced?
Yes.
The next picture is just depicting, I believe, the fence that I guess is surrounding a portion of the property.
Yes.
Where is that fence located?
That goes on Lenox, front of Lenox Street, and it actually wraps around then the back side of the property all the way back to Phoenix Street.
And it looks like it's in a condition, obviously, that all of that would have to be replaced.
Yes.
The next picture depicts some steps, and would you explain to the board members what they are and what they lead to?
These are the rear steps into the kitchen of the house.
Did Mr. Del Grosso opine that they would have to be removed and replaced?
Yes.
The next picture, I believe, depicts, is that a, what does it depict?
That's the rear of the property. That's the storm doors that are also starting to decay and have a lot of damage into them.
And would they require replacement?
Yes.
The next picture is a close-up of I'm going to assume it's wood siding that is on the property.
Yes.
And what is the situation regarding that?
That's he indicated to me that most of the entire wood of the house is rotting and would need to be replaced.
So essentially the entire exterior of the property?
Yes.
And does Mr. Del Grosso's estimate provide for that?
Yes.
Okay. What about the casings around the windows, et cetera?
He mentioned to me that we would have to replace pretty much all the windows and all the casing and trim work around the windows.
Okay. I want to call your attention to some of the interior pictures that are set forth in Exhibit E, and we'll try not to spend a lot of time with it. The first one, I really don't know what this is. It appears to be some taping product. Could you explain to the board members what that represents?
As I walked through the house with Mr. Del Grosso, the first time we noticed there was a lot of old wood paneling still on the walls. And then he asked me to just peel back some of those wood paneling to see what was behind those walls for discovery. And of this piece here, there was like a massive hole apparently that's just been taped up.
All right. And are these plaster walls?
Yes.
Okay. Can you describe what the second picture depicts?
The second picture depicts a drop ceiling in second story bedroom that obviously has water damage and leaks from the roof in the attic leaking.
And was it Mr. Del Grosso's opinion that the roof would have to be replaced as well?
Yes.
All right. And let's just kind of go through these real quick. Just explain to the board members which each one of the pictures depicts, if you don't mind.
All right. So the next picture after that was another example of the wood paneling that was in front of the old plaster. And then once we started to peel that back, then we noticed that all the plaster has water damage. It's cracked. It just shows that the structural integrity of the house is in disrepair.
Did you find a presence of mold in the property?
Yes, we have.
And is that kind of depicted in this picture at the bottom along the base?
Yes.
Okay.
And that continues with the old wood paneling and the old drop ceilings that they've kind of added to seem to hide some of the damage in the house.
Okay. Next picture. Just the same?
Same thing. You could tell, like, they added some point along most of the house, a drop ceiling and wood paneling.
The next picture seems to depict some condition of the flooring. Would you explain to the board members what you would have to do to all the flooring in the property?
Yeah. So this is another second story bedroom in the house that has obviously rotting floors. That's underneath an old heating system. And it's been brought to my attention that we would have to pretty much remove all the walls, all the plaster walls, all the floors, all the electrical that's not up to code. The plumbing also needs to be replaced.
Essentially rebuild the entire property.
Yes.
Next picture, one or two pictures seems to depict, I think, a restroom in the property. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that is that the condition that it was in at the time you purchased the property?
Yes.
And is that the current condition of it?
Yes.
All right. Second picture as well?
Yes.
Third picture just seems to indicate is this just here to indicate that this is not code compliant?
Yes.
And so all of the piping would be required to be removed and installed?
Yep. And then also a picture of the foundation that's starting to fall apart. It's an old stone foundation.
All right, let's go to the next picture and regarding the foundation. Is that the foundation that you were referring to?
Yes. And as you can see that it's covered in mold here all along.
And the next picture seems to depict some steps.
Yep, those are the steps to the bill corridors that are obviously rotted that we went over in the previous picture. And you can see the water damage, the water leakage that's been coming in.
And they would all be required to be replaced.
Yep.
A couple more.
So this is actually the garage outside the shed. So you can see, I'm not sure what it was being used for, but you can see they had an old stove here. There's an old chimney there. There was lighting. Obviously, there's water damage here. The roof is leaking. There's a sink that was in the garage.
Okay. And then lastly,
That's back in the house at the kitchen. That also, I don't believe we have an exhibit of it, but over this kitchen, the roof, there's multiple rafters that are broken that I didn't know. They looked like there was a little bow in the roof, and I wasn't sure what it was. And he confirmed with me that the rafters have cracked in half and can't support the weight anymore.
so did you request Mr. Del Grosso prepare an estimate for repair and renovation of the home to become code compliant?
Yes.
And is Exhibit F the estimate that he provided for you?
Yes.
All right. And essentially, I don't want to be redundant with the testimony, but essentially, everything you've explained to the board members that would require to be stripped down and replaced is reflective in Mr. Del Grosso's estimate.
Yes.
And when you go to the second page of that estimate, can you indicate to the board members what Mr. Del Grosso quoted you as the cost to repair and renovate this existing single-family structure?
The price that he quoted me is $297,477.
Now, Vito, that's in addition to the purchase price of the home, correct?
Correct.
So what was the purchase price of the home?
$190,000.
So essentially, if we're looking at close to a $200,000 purchase price and another $300,000 for renovations, you're essentially in the high 400s, almost $500,000 to renovate the existing single-family structure that is currently on the property.
That's correct.
Now, the property itself is surrounded by roads on two sides. Is that right?
Correct.
And it also is surrounded by other residential properties on the remaining two sides.
Correct.
And so therefore, there is no ability for you to acquire additional land to assemble 6,000 square feet. That is the track size for the twin style building.
That's correct.
I want you to look at Exhibit G, if you will, for a minute. And I know that we have Joe here as well, and he testified in a previous matter to this. That is essentially the, I think, building plan and layout for the property. And would you explain to the board members what this represents?
So this depicts a duplex building with, also I want to mention that the current property is sitting right on the street and the curb.
Right.
So what this plan depicts is that we're going to push the house back to create a sightline triangle to improve the intersection of Phoenix and Lenox Avenue.
Right. So essentially, right now where the current property exists, it impedes in the sightline triangle, but your proposal will make that situation better.
Correct.
Okay.
And it all depicts the 2 parking spaces per unit.
All right. So they will be assigned, each unit will be assigned 2 off-street parking spaces. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. All right. And the green area is just showing the areas that potentially would be open for growing grass.
We're going to
and that type of
replant
thing.
everything with grass and put a new fence around the property, side and rear.
To the best of your knowledge, and I know Joe's here, does the property meet all the other dimensional requirements of the RT district other than the track size and the lot area per dwelling unit? Does this proposal meet that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And lastly, if you'll take a look at Exhibit H, I think that there are 2 renderings, one of the front and one of the back. And would you explain to the board members what they represent?
So the front is on Lenox Avenue, and there would be 2 separate entrances per unit. They will both have 2 bedrooms on the second floor with 2 bathrooms and 1 half bath on the first floor.
Now, Vito, what type of rents do you generally charge for the property, this workforce housing that you essentially provide for your employees?
We try to keep them as low as possible. We don't raise them every year like traditional landlords would do. We don't charge anyone late fees if they're behind.
I think essentially lower than market rate?
They are lower than market, yes.
Okay. Right. So that would be the front view of the property proposed as it appears on Lenox Avenue?
Yes.
All right. And if you just describe for the board members what the second.
The second depicts the side on Phoenix Street and I guess the rear parking, how it's 2 stacked units two stack parking per unit, and then a nice little patio, and then some greenery that we would like to replace and replant.
To the bottom left of the picture, where there's some green area, that's essentially where the shed or garage property was located.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Regarding Exhibit I want to ask you a couple of questions about the proposal. First of all, if you were to, Mr. Del Grasso gave you an estimate of the cost of repair and renovation. Is it your opinion that if you were to build a new constructed single-family dwelling on that lot, you'd be in the same area of $300,000 or more?
Yes.
And so either way, whether you renovate the existing single-family or raise it and construct a new single-family dwelling, you're essentially in the high fours, almost to $500,000 at this location. Is that my understanding?
Yes.
Do you agree with that?
I agree.
Okay. And as Julia indicated, do you agree that you would be resolving a non-conforming parking, off-street parking situation with the property?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. Now, Exhibit I believe was put together by Julia, but I think since you're here testifying, we can indicate what it is. This is a map, is it not, of the surrounding area?
Yes.
And I believe there is one box to the middle bottom of the page that's identified as 1315 Lenox Avenue, and it has your lot size and it indicates where this property is located, correct?
That's correct.
And you also looked at other properties in close proximity to this property to identify whether or not this proposal of 2 units would be keeping in character with the neighborhood.
That's correct.
Right. First of all, in your opinion, does this proposal have any negative impact on any of the adjoining properties or any other properties in the neighborhood?
I believe no, not.
And in your opinion, does a 2-unit side-by-side dwelling at this location, is it in character with other units that are in close proximity to this property?
Yes, it is.
Right. And does Exhibit I essentially identify where those other properties are located in close proximity?
Yes.
All right. After the map, I believe your wife took pictures, or you or your wife took pictures of the properties that are identified in the map that we just reviewed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we don't have to go through each one of them, but do each of these pictures depict either a 2 or 3 unit buildings which are side by side?
That's correct.
All right, either twin style units or even townhouse units if there's 3 units. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And are all of these within a block of the property that is the subject of tonight's hearing?
That is correct.
You did not create the hardship pertaining to the lot area, correct?
That's correct.
I mean, the lot area is what it is. It was that size when you purchased the property. Doesn't even comply with the single-family dwelling requirements of the ordinance, does it?
That's correct.
So the lot is actually non-conforming at this time, to your understanding?
Yes.
All right. Do you believe that the requests are the minimum variances that are necessary for relief under the ordinance for this particular project?
Yes, I do.
Because the lot size doesn't change, right? We're not talking about whether or not we can move a side yard a foot closer or not. The lot is the size that it is.
Yes, that's
And
correct.
that lot size cannot be increased.
Correct.
Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. With the board's indulgence for just a minute, I'm almost finished here. Is there anything else that you want to add? Okay, that's a good point. Vito, you've indicated to the board members that you would like to try to rent some of the units out to people that work for you in your business.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. So currently, we do actually have plans for current employees to hopefully house in these units, and I just want to make it to the boards and anyone in the neighborhood that we do not intend to ever rent to any college student at all.
Are any of your rental properties in the city of Bethlehem rented to college students?
No, they are not.
And if the board were to impose such a condition, would you agree to abide by that condition?
Yes.
That's all I have for Mr. Spinelli.
Okay, thank you. Carol, do you have any questions?
No.
Pete?
Yeah. So I know you've kind of explored rebuilding a single family home. What's pushing you to do the twin?
Well, when I met with the zoning office in the city of Bethlehem, they brought to my attention that we wouldn't be able to house more than 5 unrelated individuals in one roof. So then that's why we decided to approach it this way.
So, okay, so now are you saying you can have more unrelated in the 2 homes?
So I wouldn't. So yeah, now we can have more housing for more employees, right? So I can under one roof. I'm limited to the amount of employees that I can have in one roof that are not unrelated. So now this creates more housing for more of our employees in separate.
Okay.
And then also I would need a variance for a single family home,
as
rebuild a single family home anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the one thing that I'm looking at is the minimum variance that will afford relief. So I guess there'd be less of a square foot dimensional relief that you'd be asking for in the other regard.
There would be on the lot area requirement. That's correct. And what I'll do at the end of the hearing is I will provide you with applicable Pennsylvania case law that essentially takes us out of that requirement in my profession. In my opinion, may not be anybody else's opinion, but in my opinion, and that's why I introduced all the evidence regarding the cost that's associated with building another single family dwelling or renovating this specific single family dwelling on this property.
Yeah, I guess.
But I agree with you that obviously a 4,000 square foot tract size is less than the required 6,000 square foot tract size.
Right. So you're saying that it's financially not feasible to rebuild a single family home, or
what I'm saying is that the board members are permitted to consider multiple factors in a dimensional variance case, including the economic detriment to the applicant if the variance was denied, the financial hardship created by any work necessary to bring the building in strict compliance with the zoning requirements. And so what I'm essentially saying is that we can counterbalance that excessive cost to rebuild or renovate the single family dwelling and spread it over the 2 units.
so yeah, so you have 2 units to recover the cost.
That is correct.
More feasible.
And
I'm not hiding that. That
Yeah.
is clearly out there, and we acknowledge that.
and the cost to build the twin is similar to a single.
It is, I believe he indicated it was. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
you mentioned to me that it would not be much more to build a twin than a single family home.
Okay. Are there any questions from the audience? Please come to the podium, please.
Also, please identify yourself by name and address.
In case she has questions for you.
Okay. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right. I am Catherine Grasso. I live at 55 West Greenwich. That's on the corner of Greenwich and Lenox. So my property is across the street from the proposed or the property of that we're talking about. Okay. So I'm curious in terms of the dimensions. Can you explain how you're accounting for the required width of each unit as well as the required side yards being 4 feet in addition to the 20 feet of backyard?
We have another witness here that was going to go through some of the dimensions.
Should I wait on that then?
Well, maybe if we just bring them up and the board allows you to, maybe
Well,
we could just ask some questions.
Yeah, I
I
didn't
can
know.
wait too. I can just.
Yeah, if you can, if you defer to the next witness,
Can
just
you,
say, I don't know.
can you
for
answer
the
that
next
question?
one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
You'll have the opportunity to ask that next witness that question.
Yes, please. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I'm thinking about the functionality of the parking. The 4 units that are on the property, does it require 2 of the 4 cars to be blocked in if they're all in use?
That configuration meets the code requirements for the city of Bethlehem. They are permitted to be stacked.
So they're permitted to be stacked, but just in terms of functionality, if I lived with my roommate and I got home before my roommate, but I was expecting to need to leave earlier in the morning, I could ask my roommate to park on the street so that I could back out easily.
Yes, because we thought that would be better than having all 4 of them, anybody else park out on the street.
Okay.
We thought that on lot parking in correcting a nonconformity associated with this property was better than a nonconformity.
Okay. So in terms of the parking being on Phoenix Street, was there any research done into the snow removal on Phoenix Street? I've talked with some of the neighbors who use Phoenix Street to park for their homes on Elizabeth. Any research on that?
We do not, other than the fact that the owners of this dwelling and occupants that rented it would have had to park either on Phoenix or Lenox during snow removal. And this gives people an opportunity to get off the streets and not have to deal with it. And the city plows would not have to deal with additional cars at this location.
Yeah, and they couldn't park on Phoenix because it's a one-way alley. Okay, have you looked to make sure that all vehicles will meet the requirements to be able to turn in there in terms of size regulations?
All the spaces meet the requirements of the ordinance.
Okay, and it's just pavement. It's not a garage or structure.
There's no structure being proposed.
Okay. Will it create any difficulty for people to use Phoenix Street? I'm imagining if someone needs to back out in order for the other person to back out, is it possible that it could block up someone trying to get through?
I don't think it's any different than somebody backing out of their driveway at any other location. I mean, somebody might be inconvenienced for a couple of seconds for somebody to back out and turn around, but I don't think it's any different than any other street in the city.
Okay. In terms of the rendering, there's no front porches, right? Okay.
I don't believe so. No.
No.
So would it be possible, even if not preferable, to rebuild a single family home?
I don't think not at $300,000. It's a $400,000.
Okay. But was there an inspection done before buying the property?
It wasn't
Joe,
inspection done.
let's let your client answer the questions.
There was a sale inspection, yes.
Okay, so the cost of rebuilding or clearing it out, demolishing it, and then building a different property was known.
No, not known to the full extent, no.
But an inspection was done, so the state of the house.
Not to this degree, because a lot of the damage was hidden behind these drop ceilings that were added, these wood paneled walls that were added. So we didn't really understand. And you can see some of the exhibits had paint on the outside foundation and the inside foundation.
Okay,
So until we peeled some of that off, we didn't really know what was behind there.
I understand. So if cost was not an issue, would it be possible to rebuild a single family home?
Yeah, not without the variance.
So it would require what type of variance?
A lot area variance.
A dimension variance for a single family home. Okay, so a lesser variance than what's being asked right now. Okay. So questions for the board.
So to be clear, your questions right now are going to him.
Oh, is there a chance for me to ask you guys questions?
You can make a comment later on. The board usually doesn't answer questions, but
Okay.
you'll have a chance to make a comment. And if you want to ask questions as a part of that process, we'll see if we can answer them.
Okay, that
The
sounds
board-
good. I'll hold
The
them.
board typically does not answer questions.
It was
though.
more just a logistical thing, not to put you on the spot.
So what's your if it's logistical or procedural? What's the question?
In terms of the assurance that renters would not be students, how is that maintained or upheld? Is it like a spit and a handshake, or
So
is there a formality to it?
so let's defer that. Raise that during your comments.
Okay,
please.
okay, we'll do. Thank you. That's all I have. Okay, for now.
Does anyone else in the audience have questions? Questions at this time?
We know you have another
What-
witness.
What,
Real quick, I'm going to put the engineer on very.
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
we're
yeah,
gonna,
yeah, that's
we're
fine.
gonna switch.
Yep.
Good.
I promise I'll be faster than normal.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
Joe, I know you've identified yourself previously, but for the purpose of this hearing, just state your name, please.
Good evening again. My name is Joseph Renko from Black Forest Engineering.
And I believe you've already identified yourself as a professional civil engineer in Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. We are looking at Exhibit G that was submitted in the package to the board members. And first of all, are you the preparer of that document?
Yes, my firm did the actual field survey, topography, and identified the existing features on the site, and then we'll put together this sort of like a site sketch plan.
So let me ask you this. How long have you been doing this?
Almost 20 years.
Have you designed twin style buildings on lots of this size and less?
And Yeah, I don't want to say in what municipalities, but definitely, yes.
Okay. And do you believe that this is, I mean, is this a reasonable approach to this particular property? And is this a reasonable density for this property?
I believe so. To enforce that, just that it's not just my opinion, is that we're actually honoring all of the setbacks that the city of Bethlehem determined were appropriate for this district. So between the rear, the side, and then we're going from an existing condition where we have a 0 setback. And what the only thing that was missed in the testimony is the existing building, the steps and porch, they're actually built over the property line. So they're actually on the city right away right now. So with the proposal, we're not only removing that obstruction into the city right away, but we're also pulling the building back off of the front yard setback enough to sort of respect that clear sight triangle.
All right. And so otherwise, in terms of, I mean, obviously the lot size is what it is, correct? I mean, there's no ability with the property being surrounded the way it is to acquire additional lands to assemble 6,000 square feet.
Correct.
Right. And talk a little bit about the parking area and how that was designed very quickly, if you don't mind.
Sure. I mean, right now, it's again, it's an existing non-conforming structure or non-conformity because there is no off-street parking. So what we wanted to do, we did have a staff, and this was something that didn't come up. We had a meeting with the city, the planners, the staff to talk about sort of how they would prefer to see this oriented and how the parking entering or exiting from Phoenix as opposed to Lenox. So we did have some initial conversations with them to get some of their feedback on how they'd like us to move forward with the site plan that ultimately we would present to you, which they did, the applicant did. So we're providing these 4 spaces, 2 for each unit. They would be, as everybody testified already, they'd be dedicated specifically to each of the 2 units. So there would be coordination.
That's all I have for Mr. Marco.
Okay, questions? Any questions from the audience?
We told you you'd have your chance. So,
Yes,
yeah.
this is your opportunity. And please state your name again.
Sure. Catherine Grasso, 55 West Greenwich.
Thank you.
So I have some questions about the dimension requirements. You probably heard me ask it already, but I know that there's a requirement for, actually, I'll just ask a question. Can you explain how the property accounts for the required width of 30 feet wide per unit and each having a 4-foot side yard?
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So each unit doesn't have to have a 4-foot side yard. So this is nothing ever fits inside a box. I'm sure you understand that. So this is one of those, it's a unique site because it's on the corner. So essentially this one has 2 front yards, 1 rear yard, and 1 side yard. So there's a 4-foot side yard that is on between the neighbors to the north. And I apologize, I don't know their names or the addresses, but it's on the north property line. So that's where we observe that as a 4-foot side yard. The rear property line is where the garage is existing and where those parking spaces are now. So we have more than the required rear yard setback. And then in this district, there's a 0 front yard setback. So the reason the building right now in its condition is actually sits on the literally right on the right of way line on Phoenix and right on the right of way line of Lenox is because that's what the zoning ordinance allows. The applicant here said, we don't want to push that. We want to give a little bit of a front yard. And it also allows us to sort of, like I said, respect that clear sight triangle to make it a little bit safer for vehicles that would be potentially coming out of Phoenix. So that's my description of the setbacks. And if I didn't explain something.
No, you explained it, but I got the notice a week ago, so I've tried to learn as much as I can because I care very much about my neighborhood and not overcrowding it. But I think that 4-foot side yards are required on both sides of the dwelling.
Not per the ordinance. Corner property is defined as having 2 front yards, 1 side yard and 1 rear yard.
So let me just add on to that. So in some districts, there isn't a 0 front yard. Some districts have a 20-foot front yard. If this was in one of those districts, we'd only be able to get a credit for the 4-foot yard there. We'd have essentially 2 20-foot yards.
So is the front yard on Lenox?
The front yard is along the public street.
Which one?
Lenox and Phoenix. We have 2.
So the backyard are the parking spaces?
Correct.
So the yard is the paved parking spaces.
Correct.
Okay.
Which is permitted, which the parking spaces are permitted in rear yard space.
Okay,
Actually
and-
preferred in the city of Bethlehem.
So if I'm a resident and I want to use my yard space, I have to move my car out of my parking space and park it on the street to use it?
That's not what yard space means. I think you're thinking of yard space as being a green yard.
Yeah.
These are setbacks, which means that the distance between one property line.
But there
and-
has to be 20 feet for a rear yard. I mean, it's marked there as well.
So let me explain this politely.
That's nice.
Yeah. So what that means is you can't put that setback says you can't put a structure in that. You have to respect that minimum yard space to not put a building. You can have accessory structures. You could have a garage, just like the garage that's out there now, essentially up to the property line. You could have a 6-foot vinyl privacy fence in that rear yard. You could have a pond, a pool, pretty much anything else you want, but you cannot put your house, a commercial building or anything like that in that setback. And that's out of respect for the adjoining neighbors.
Okay. So if I was going to list this as a property that was going to be rented by somebody, would I be describing the parking space as the yard space?
Well, you don't have to define yard space. I mean, you have so there's other things that, there's so many rules. Okay. So there's
I know.
minimum,
Tried so hard.
so there's minimum, and the board knows this, there's a minimum or maximum allowable impervious coverage and building coverage. So that's sort of how the ordinance protects, like how much I think you in your mind envision is yard space. The site meets that. We're not here for a variance for that our building is too big and we don't have enough building, our building coverage exceeds that. So if this and ever sell it, it's basically, we have all the required yard space.
Okay. And are the yards private for each unit?
No.
Okay. I had one more question, but it was for Vito. I don't know. Are we allowed to go back?
I could switch.
Okay.
Hold on, let's.
Yeah. I better
I'm
answer
sorry.
other
Okay.
questions.
Yeah. I'll
anyone
save
else-
that.
you-
Let me
you-
just make sure.
You can stay right there. Does anyone else have questions for the engineer?
I was going to get my steps in going back and
Yeah,
forth.
before he goes back, I want to so if no one else has any other questions for the engineer, then Vito, if you want to come back up, you can come back up.
Thank you. Okay, this was just regarding something you said earlier about wanting to do the duplex instead of a single family home because you could fit more than 5 unrelated people in the duplex. They're 2 bedrooms, 2.5 bath. Are you planning on putting more than 5 people in those properties?
No, that's not what we're planning at all.
Okay. But you're not doing a single family home so that you can, in terms of the regulation, fit more than 5 unrelated people in the units.
I didn't mean it per unit. It's just that I think I can get now one family that's related in one unit. A family of 4 can live there, and then another family of 4
So 4 and 4 in each unit.
potentially.
Okay. Okay, I think that's. Sorry, just have a lot of notes. Okay, I think that's everything with my questions.
Okay.
I do have comments. I don't know.
You have a chance in a moment.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, we're going to move on to,
Pep, you're good. Anything else?
Yes, I have no more witnesses. Just move the admission of our exhibits.
We need to know.
or comments?
You're good. No comments now.
Does anyone have any comments? Please step back.
The way it has to happen.
Okay, thank you.
No, you're doing awesome.
Alrighty. Like I said, I'm Catherine Grasso. I live at 55 West Greenwich Street. I own half of a duplex, so I live in a twin and I live in one unit. It's on the corner of West Greenwich and Lenox, so I would be directly affected by this proposed property. I've owned my home for nearly 10 years. I'm very proud to own in it and live in it. I love my neighborhood. I love living alongside my neighbors. I care deeply about maintaining and developing my neighborhood in a thoughtful manner. For context, the plot for just my side of my unit is 3,600 square feet, give or take. With that, I have my home, I have a small yard and a detached garage. This is more square feet than what we're looking at on this property, where they want to fit an entire duplex. Based on my research, there's not a duplex with a plot nearly that small in neighborhood. The smallest I could find was 70 West Elizabeth at 2260, which is still 500 square feet larger than the proposed unit plot size. I forgot I also have handouts. Is it too late? Can I give them to you?
No.
Okay.
Do you have a copy for Mr. Vibrato?
I just did some research on the makeup of the
Hold
neighborhood.
on, hold on, wait until you get back to the
Oh,
mic.
sorry.
You're fine. Just so she can hear. So what we're going to do, just as this procedurally, we're going to mark this as Objectives Exhibit 1.
Perfect.
Okay?
It's the only one. So.
You're good.
So as I was saying, based on my experience as well as on the table on the right, you can see that the average neighborhood plot size is significantly larger per unit than what we're seeing for the proposal. I understand that the applicants are part of the community and care about the community, but in terms of what I'm seeing, in terms of the potential impact on the neighborhood, I'm not seeing care for this particular neighborhood. What they're asking for is a significant dimension reduction for both the plot size and the property size. According to Article 1325.06B in the City of Bethlehem zoning ordinance, to receive an approval for this request.
When you're reading, you're talking a lot faster. So
Okay,
just slow down when
yeah.
you're reading. Thank you.
So in order to meet this article, he must meet all 5 requirements outlined. I don't believe they meet any of the 5 requirements, but even if a board member thought they didn't meet just one, that would be reason enough to vote to deny the appeal. So first is that there are unique physical circumstances or conditions, irregularity, narrowness, shallowness, and that unnecessary hardship is due to such conditions. Although the plot is claimed to be unique or narrow, it's not actually that unique. There are similar areas in the neighborhood, one of those being 1322 Main Street, and they're just too small for a duplex. Those other properties have the 44 by 80 feet. It currently has a single family home, and that's on there in a reasonable manner. The plot is simply too small for a duplex. It's not particularly unique. I broke the second one into 2 parts. So first part of that is that because of the physical characteristics, the supposed unique characteristics, there's no possibility that the property can be developed in strict conformity with the provisions of the zoning ordinance. So I understand the insight about the property and needing extensive repairs that might be too costly. But it's not his only option to build. Sorry, I keep saying he because the application said just one name. I'm not meaning to be exclusive. So it's not the only option. There is an option to buy a single family home. Further, Article 1311, Standard 1311.10E in the zoning ordinance indicates every effort should be made to preserve and reuse older buildings. I think that they've probably done their due diligence about that. But if they choose to demolish the current property, they're not limited to replacing it to a duplex. This isn't the only option. So it'd be possible to rebuild another single family home. I don't think that cost should be the thing that's factored into it when we're looking at zoning regulations. Second part of that, second point is that the variance is therefore necessary to enable the reasonable use of the property. It's a really small property for a duplex. Building a duplex is not the only option, nor is it a reasonable option. Like you can see with the housing sizes per unit and the plot square footage for unit, it would be significantly smaller than the rest. It would also be significantly different in terms of the makeup based on bedrooms. So it's not the only option. It's not the most reasonable use of the property. So 2 units will overcrowd the property as it's too small. And allowing for that type of overcrowding, right? This idea that we could fit 5 or more people in the unit, even if that's not the initial intention, would go against purpose B of the zoning ordinance to prevent overcrowding. Third, such unnecessary hardship has not been created by the appellant. I understand that by buying a property on a small plot means that you can apply for these types of hardships. And I understand it would be more convenient if the rules were relaxed for them, but it doesn't constitute a hardship. And although it might be costly to rebuild the current building, it will also be costly to build a duplex. So cost should not be the deciding factor in the hardship. The cost of owning and developing the property was taken on by choice. This isn't something that needs to be decided by the board. So the hardship was created by Mr. Spinelli, or Avellino Holdings, excuse me. Fourth, the variance, if authorized, will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood or district in which the property is located. So the main argument is that by putting a duplex into a neighborhood where there are lots of duplexes is not going to change the character of the neighborhood. But I think that's an oversimplification of what makes up our neighborhood. I've lived there for 10 years and I love my neighborhood. And one of the things that I like about them is the way that the houses are configured, particularly with porches. Most of the homes in the surrounding area have porches, and it gives the neighborhood character. It gives us the distinctive character that so many of the neighborhoods in Bethlehem has. So I think that when we're thinking about the duplexes, it's not just about, is it a duplex or not, but it's about, is it the only duplex? Is it the only single family home? In the table on the left, you can see that on Lenox Street, that within the RT district, a lot of them are duplexes. Right? So, or a lot of them are single family homes, 57% are single family homes. So by maintaining that on the property, that is in line with the norm of the neighborhood. Additionally, the features of the duplex, as I mentioned, there would only be 2 bedrooms in each. This is not characteristic of most of the units in the neighborhood. The plot size is significantly smaller, less than half of what we see for other units.
Yes.
Greater by 500 square feet for a lot of them. So this is a significant ask in terms of the dimension reduction. I think, to my knowledge, I tried to do as much research as I could. Every place in the surrounding area has a small, maybe, but a private yard. So those private yards are a distinctive characteristic. I think in the way that this is configured, this seems to me more like an apartment. If there's not necessarily private yard space for people to enjoy as their tenants in those buildings, then it seems more like an apartment to me, which we don't have in the neighborhood. Although the proposal suggests that they're going to clear out the former barber shop and would remove that secondary structure, it doesn't necessarily make the unit conform or the property conform with the rest of the neighborhood, as much of the rest of the neighborhood has a detached structure in the form of a garage or shed or other type of storage. So by removing that structure and including paved parking, that's deviating from the norm of the neighborhood. Like I said, there's no porch. I also noticed that in standard 1311.10i, regarding design standards, porches should be considered on new buildings. I don't think there's space for porches, which is probably why they're not considered. So I'm also thinking not only just the features of the duplex, but also of who will be there. Our neighborhood is made up of long-term owners and long-term renters. So I know that there's the promise to have only employees in those places, and I don't know these folks and know whether or not that's going to be something that's always able to be made good on. I'm also a little bit concerned about the fact that if there's this guarantee of having low rent or below market value rent, that has the potential to lower property values in the surrounding area. That gives me great concern. Fifth, and this is something that I sort of mentioned before, in terms of this fifth finding, the variance, if authorized, will represent the minimum variance that will afford relief and will represent the least modification possible of the regulation in issue. Building a duplex is not the only option. A single family home is an option. The current plot is not large enough for a single family home. So there would need to be a dimension variance from 4,000 square feet to 3,620, I think. That would be the minimum variance that could be afford relief. Again, this is significant in terms of what they're trying to fit into a much smaller plot of land. The zoning regulations exist for a reason. It's simply not enough space. I know that you probably think I'm crazy, but if you're talking about yard space and I'm thinking about who might be living in the space, if I want to have a patio or I want to have a barbecue, might I be potentially tempted to use the parking space and park on the street instead so that I can gather in this backyard area with my roommates or my friends or whoever? So if this was a dimension reduction for a single family home, that would make perfect sense to me. That option would be the minimal dimension reduction that they could ask for. It also wouldn't require a lot of the finagling we see in terms of the space. The units wouldn't be so small. So it would allow for a single family home would allow the property to have a usable and private yard space. So they're creating a larger hardship for themselves by proposing a duplex for the sake of making money rather than a single family home, which is more reasonable for the space. And one of those things in terms of those ordinances is that it has to be a reasonable use of the space. So in sum, the property is not too unique or narrow to build on. A variance is not necessary for more, a smaller variance is necessary for more reasonable options. The unnecessary hardship has been created by the appellants. The style and size of the duplex will indeed alter the distinctive character of the neighborhood. I know and love my neighborhood well, and we have a very distinctive appearance to our buildings, and people have space in them. So this is clearly not the minimum variance to afford relief, and it will also modify the regulation considerably. So if even one of those things that I said a board member agrees with, that would be enough to vote to deny this appeal, as all 5 of those things have to be found. I also want to point out that the zoning ordinance, the purpose of this is to promote the public health, safety, and general welfare by encouraging the most appropriate use of the land. The zoning ordinances in terms of space are those guidelines. Prevent the overcrowding of land. I think with this idea that we could have 5 or more people in each unit is incredibly concerning to me. Even with 4 people in each unit, this is really an overcrowding of this particular plot. It's not even large enough, according to current zoning standards, for a single family home. In terms of the traffic that might be created on Phoenix or the additional parking that might happen on Lenox, I think it's a concern. And so I think all of these things have to be taken into consideration. The potential parking that might happen on the street, because even though they're allowed, the stacked parking, I think we know inevitably that people are not going to want to be blocked in by their roommate. They're going to park elsewhere. It's going to contribute to traffic congestion. I think I've probably said enough. So thank you for listening to me. Thank you for answering my questions. Please consider those 5 requirements for a variance approval.
Don't go anywhere.
Oh, sure.
You have cross-examination?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Piparato has the
All right.
opportunity to ask you questions.
Great.
So a couple different things. When you read the requirement of the first requirement for a variance, you failed to mention the last 4 words in that section, and that is, or other physical conditions. Did you read that in the MPC?
Yeah, I was just trying to be quick for the sake of
Were
time.
you aware that it's not just narrowness of lot or irregular shape, but other physical conditions, including the condition of the property, that also be considered by the zoning hearing board when you did your research? Did you come upon any of that?
Oh, no, it's the week went by pretty quickly.
All right. Your objection is not to a duplex because you live in one, do you
Although,
not?
wait, I think the reason that I thought that was because on the application, it says unique physical characteristics, including narrowness of lot in irregular shape.
Well, the code permits any other physical
Okay,
condition.
I was just going off what was stated by you in the application.
Your objection is not to a duplex because you live in a duplex. Your objection, from what I understand, is a duplex on this lot. Is that my understanding of it?
On a lot of this size, any lot of this size, it's too big.
Because you're saying that's an overbuild. Is that
I think
my
it's going to lead
understanding?
to overcrowding.
Were you aware that the ordinance permits 80% of the lot to be covered by building, and this is a 41% coverage?
I did see that. I'm really glad it's not 80%.
But they could, if they wanted to.
If
whether
they got the
single-family dwelling or
approval.
otherwise,
Oh, sorry.
single-family dwelling or otherwise, they could build 80% of that lot with structures. Were you aware of that?
Yeah.
Would you consider that an overbuild?
Depends on the nature of the lot.
So if it was a single-family dwelling that covered 80% of the lot, but this duplex only covers 41% of the lot, you'd rather see the single-family dwelling there that covers 80% of the lot. Is that your testimony?
Yeah, it would be within regulation.
Now, when you talk about the character of the neighborhood, you threw out some percentages about singles and duplexes and that type of thing. You would agree that the neighborhood is a mixture of single-family dwellings, duplexes, and frankly, there's also some townhouses.
Like row homes?
Yeah, like row homes.
Yeah, not on Lenox.
Right, but that's the neighborhood, is it not?
Sure.
There might be less duplexes than singles, but there are duplexes there. That's the neighborhood you live in.
Duplexes with porches.
That's the neighborhood you chose to live in. Is that correct?
Yeah, I didn't choose to have someone buy a house and tear it down and build something different.
But you understood that there were duplexes in that neighborhood when you bought your home. And in
Yeah,
fact, you bought a duplex.
they have incredible character. Yes.
All right. And when you talk about a porch, were you aware that the existing porch on this dwelling happens to encroach on the city right of way? And
No,
that's
I
the
haven't
reason why
researched
a
their
porch
current
was not
property
proposed
lines.
for this property.
Well, could it be included in if it was further setback?
No, because then you'd violate some of the setback
Because
requirements.
there's not enough space.
Well, there wasn't for the.
Sorry,
You
Joe.
can't ask questions right now.
I just want to ask about the.
One at a
So
time.
first, have your attorney ask the questions and let everyone speak
Okay.
slowly and one person at a time.
So the single family dwelling that exists there is in more violation than what is being proposed by this applicant. Were you aware of that?
No.
And I think you seem to suggest that you would rather have on-street parking than off-street parking in that configuration. Is that my understanding of your testimony as well?
No, I'm simply pointing out that the current parking is not functional for the regular person.
Is that more functional than parking on the street?
In terms of individual use, it's certainly for an individual, it's
Neighborhood.
more convenient to park on the street.
Is it better for the neighborhood to have 4 off-street parking spaces than to have the people that reside in that single-family dwelling parking on the street?
If there's some type of enforcement of that to make sure that all 4 cars associated with the unit would always be using just those parking spaces, yes.
Well, isn't that for anybody? Isn't that for anybody that has off-street parking?
No, they don't
That
have to use it.
That's correct. But the same with you.
But if you're proposing it as a solution, it should be a functional solution. It's not functional if I have to be blocked in by my roommate.
So if I understand your testimony, you disagree with the city ordinance that allows the parking to be in that configuration because you don't think it's appropriate.
No, I'm just pointing out what everyday people do. If it's inconvenient to be blocked in by their roommate, they're more likely to use the street. It's
But it
not a
would make
functional
no
solution.
difference to you if it was in compliance with the ordinance.
Well, I'm glad it's in compliance with the ordinance. You've obviously done your due diligence, but I'm talking about practical implications for the general welfare of the neighborhood. Lenox is a really crowded street because even though there's almost no student renters in the neighborhood, we're in close proximity to Moravian. And so on a Saturday or a summer day, you're not going to see a ton of crowding on that street. I regularly come home. I've had to call Moravian to ask people to move out of the way of my garage. It's a very crowded street. So
Not any
having
of that.
more cars
But
there.
isn't the possibility that somebody will park off the street better than not? Particularly with a 5-bedroom single-family dwelling that's there with no parking?
Yeah, but if it's a 5-bedroom single family dwelling, it's less likely that all 5 people are going to have cars. Whereas if we have 2 units with 4 people in them each, that's going to be 8 vehicles in a very small space.
To the best of your knowledge, is there any prohibition to leasing that existing home to 5 adults?
No.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Anything else?
Oh, for me? No.
You know what?
Sure. Yeah.
No.
No?
I thought I was allowed to ask. a question.
Are you here as the engineer?
Right now, I'm not. Now I'm in the audience.
That's not the way it works. You can't. If you have a question,
I
Mr.
just wanted to clarify something that I think was disingenuous that the board heard there.
If Mr. Pepperotto wants to recall you as a witness, Mr. Pepperotto can recall you as a witness. So that
1 minute. Can I have 1 minute?
if Mr. Pepperotto wants,
I'll call him as a witness if you'll have the patience for the 1 minute.
we will have the patience
Well,
for
1
as
minute,
many witnesses
yes.
as you want, Joe.
All right.
So, ma'am,
So
you're done?
Yeah, but he had a question for me?
No question.
no,
I'm just
he's
going to make a
gonna
statement.
clarify
He
something.
wants to.
Okay, you're good
You're
to
fine.
go.
You can sit down.
Thank you.
You're good.
For the court stenographer.
Okay.
State your name again.
My name is Joseph Renko from Black Forest Engineering.
And Joe, as a result of some of the comments you've heard from members of the audience, there's something that you want to advise the board of.
I just want to make a statement to the board and also a clarification for the resident who just made that. There was a disingenuous statement or maybe just an assumption that porches aren't proposed because they wouldn't fit. That's the case right now. The way that the house is built, that is the case and the truth. With what the applicant and the proposal that's before you right now, I talked before ad nauseum about a 0 front yard setback. The building is allowed to be on the front yard setback. It's not. There's more than enough room on that plan for a porch if the applicant wanted to do it. Unfortunately, there's nothing in the zoning ordinance or the city's ordinance that requires a builder to put a porch just because it fits in better with the neighborhood.
And so so very quickly, if the applicant wanted it for a front yard, they can certainly keep it for a front yard without a porch.
Keep it for a front yard without a porch.
That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for a minute.
Okay, any more remarks?
Nothing from our side.
Yeah, it's just comments.
Comment?
Yep.
Please. Just state your name and address, please.
My name is Sharon Wimmer, 210 East Garrison Street, Bethlehem. I am not speaking as a neighbor. I'm speaking as a friend who, oh, sorry, I'm so nervous.
It's all right.
My daughter rents 37 West Fairview Street from Vito. 2 years ago, she was diagnosed with a very stage 4 metastatic cancer. She lived in the State College area. We were very concerned that she wasn't living back in Bethlehem. She's a single mother of 3. So we brought her to our house on East Garrison Street, and they lived with us for 8 weeks. We were at our wits' end, so we went out one night. We are patrons of the Brick and talked to Vito and said, "Do you have any apartments available?" And he said, "Oh, maybe, in a couple of weeks or so." I think one of his employees was living there, but she was moving on and she wasn't going to live there anymore. So 2 weeks later, my daughter was moved into his apartment. No rent increase, no problems, no questions. He cared about our family. He cared about our life. He cared about my daughter. She's been there. This is her 3rd year. I just think I'm a character witness. I know the lady before me was speaking about him not caring about the community or his clients or his whoever. That is very untrue, in my opinion. And without him, I don't know where we'd be right now. My daughter is in remission right now, waiting for a PET scan tomorrow, but I think she's going to live at Vito's as long as he'll have her, until she can afford to maybe buy the house if he wants to sell it to her. But he has no ill intentions with his tenants, in my opinion. And we love him.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I would like to make a comment then.
Okay, please step up to the podium.
Hi, my name is Maddie Hernandez. I live 21 West Laurel Street, about half a block away from Moravian University. How I know Vito is that my mother has worked for him for over 8 years. So when we went through financial hardship, my mom asked him and I called him and said, "Hey, you have anything or anywhere to rent?" And he was like, "Yeah." First of all, I was thinking it's going to be very expensive because it's right next to university, and why take me when he could probably rent it out to a couple of kids, and but he didn't. He actually rented it to me, and right now I've been living there for almost 2 years. He's never raised the rent. If I need anything, I just call him. He's like right there. He's family to us. My sister works for him as well, and with this property, if there's concerns about who's going to live there, actually my mother is the person that would be taking one of the houses. She doesn't have a lot of cars because they're retired. Well, my mom's not retired, but my dad's over 90 years old. They don't like to sit out on the porch or the back porch or have barbecues. They'll usually come to my house for that. So there's no issue with them. They're not very loud or anything. They keep quiet. They mind their business. And then the second home would probably go to my sister. At the moment, she's in her 20s. She can't afford rent around here. It's so expensive. So she will probably end up occupying the other thing. The most curse that we could probably foresee in the future for those properties would be probably 1 or 2, as my brother would live there. So it's my mother, my father, and my brother, and 3 people. And then my sister would probably occupy the other unit, which is, she's right there, and it's 1 person only. But he does care about the community. I've never had issues with him. And again, both him and his wife are family to us. And my mom's going to end up retiring from there and working until the last of her days, because she probably doesn't want to retire either because he treats her so well.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, nothing else? Okay, a motion to go into
So,
it.
Mr.
Oh, you have
Vibrato,
one more thing.
Mr. Vibrato, I think indicated he may have some case law that I think.
Oh, really?
I think you know I may know
You've
this
been
case
very,
law
very
well.
patient, but
Oh, okay.
look, boards routinely grant dimensional variances, right? There were many of them that before you this evening, and on whether that's right or that's wrong, that happens. And in many cases that Steve and I attend, lawyers like to use the Hertzberg case, right? Well, the Hertzberg tells you dimensional variance is a little less a requirement, this and that. Does anybody ever bother to read the facts of the Hertzberg case, which applies to blighted and properties that are in a state of disrepair in a city in which people really would not take an interest in purchasing, renovating, or rebuilding unless they had the ability to obtain variances that allowed them to build something that would be more reasonable economically. So when people tell you that you can't take into account economics, that's not true. The specific language of the court case, courts may consider, meaning boards as well, multiple factors, including the economic detriment to the applicant if the variance was denied, the difference between a single and a double, the financial hardship created by any work necessary to bring the building into strict compliance with the requirements of the zoning and building ordinance. That's the reason why I presented to you evidence that it's almost $300,000 to rehab or renovate this property. Equally as much to build a single. Now, I'm not downplaying this neighborhood. It's a beautiful neighborhood, but I'm not so sure there's many $500,000 to $500,000 homes, single family homes in this neighborhood. You are permitted by case law to take that into consideration in your deliberations. And finally, you know, I've never heard so many objections to one additional unit on a piece of property. One unit. You can't say that this isn't the character of the neighborhood because it is the character in the neighborhood. In fact, would somebody rather have that single family dwelling that exists there now with many of the code violations that exist as to parking, clear sight triangle, all the rest of the stuff that goes on with that piece of property, or something beautiful like the project that my clients are proposing? So again, I don't want to belabor the point, but I do want the board, and Steve, you'll advise them, you know what the cases are in that regard. But you can take that into consideration. And it was a long hearing, but the reason why I went into depth over the condition of the property and the cost to build or renovate and rehab is because you are permitted to consider that now in a dimensional variance case, specifically in one that involves a property with a home on it in the condition that this home is. Thank you so much for your patience.
Thank you.
Now.
I didn't know that. we was gonna do that. All right, motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
All right. Rob. What?
Did you raise your hand earlier and we didn't see you? Okay. So effectively, once we stop those comments, that part of the case closed. Yeah, we can't reopen it now. All right.
Okay.
All right, I'll see you out there.
They would have asked me. Student has used.
But it's sitting in the dark. Sorry,
Yeah.
Maybe the future of the zoning changes.
That's all right.
Well, that's true. That's true. Okay.
Percentage doesn't
Give them
matter.
where-
Bottom line,
I would
there's-
have thought if they were.
That's why I just wanted to.
And we
questions.
we met with them. So we created sort of, and they said, we don't need you as a So it's like, no, they're like.
Yeah, I just want to clarify relative to.
That's fine. I'm fine.
They probably.
She's a frustrated.
I'll get them out of here. Thanks, Darlene.
As it could have.
Oops. One as well as.
Vermont.
Oh, okay.
Are you going to do the motion?
Okay.
That's all I. Okay, we'll go back on the record.
I'd like to make a motion to grant the variance with the condition that the housing not be rented to students or regulated housing.
Well, actually, I mean, one clarification, Pip. I mean, is a variance or a variance and a special exception, and maybe blurring lines. I've blurred lines. You're good. That was perfectly made.
All right.
Yes.
Second.
Okay.
I'm writing.
Take it.
Mr. Schneck,
Yes.
Ms. Ritter,
Yes.
Ms. Lee.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience.
You're approved.
everybody.
So, in world record.
Sure.
So for the benefit, there was a question I was asked, and I remembered you asked it before we went out as to how the city enforces a condition like that. And I'm sorry, it did not occur to me until we were out in the hallway that we never really answered that. Darlene, here's the city's director of planning. We're not on the record right now, but just so you understand, because you asked that question, I want to make sure it got answered.
Yeah, because it does raise concerns because the list of people who are living in his current properties are not employees.
It's fine. So whether or not they're employees or not, I mean, student housing, regulated rentals is a different thing. So Darlene, why don't you speak to that?
Well, I would say student housing, right at this point, is not permitted in this area because it's not within a student housing overlay. I'd say the city's easiest way for enforcement generally is that we have a regulation, a rental inspection program. All rental units are inspected once every 3 years. And that allows the inspector, obviously, to make sure that the units are up to the basic building code, but also it's clear then whether or not students are living in a unit.
So we just want to let you asked that question. I want to make sure we got that answered. Okay.
Thanks again,
All right.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
I'll second that emotion.
Second that motion.
Yes.
I need you to sign right
there.
No, you remember that you remember that Makata one, the one that settled where they had to come in a couple months ago? One where they appealed it. It was on the really small block.
Yes.
And then afterwards they appealed it and the city said we'd like to use it, like it's fine. They came back with a smaller house.